Okay, so that third activity is intended to bring out the problem of skepticism and how we can know things for certain. And again, underneath that is lying two intuitions and two powerful senses. First of all, we can only know things if we're certain about them. But hang on, we know lots of things. And there's a problem here because actually when we challenge things, can we really be that certain? So we have these two different intuitions a little bit in conflict. And this maybe explains why different philosophers have created really quite different epistemologies, come up with really different ideas about what is a good theory of knowledge. Okay, so what we're going to be working towards over the first part of this course is, can we come up with a definition for what is knowledge? Can we actually come up with a way saying, I know that something, what does that mean, and can we define it formally? So it's worth now spending a little bit of time, and that's the last activity for today, is thinking about what could be in a definition. And a very good epistemologist called Linda Zevsky, a very good current political epistemologist, currently working in Oklahoma, I think. But yeah, one of the top philosophers currently doing research, a leader in epistemology. She does something called virtue epistemology, which we're going to come to. Anyway, she has come up and done a lot of work about what could count as a good definition, and we're going to look at that in a bit more detail next lesson. But for the purposes of the last activity, I just want you to consider, there's different types of definitions for something. There's different types of ways of explaining what things are, and one of the ways that philosophers have talked about is to really capture exactly what something is to describe its essence. What is the essence of something? What is the true meaning of something? What is the real fundamentals of an idea or a concept? And we're just going to explore the fact that there are kind of different ways of describing things. And to bring out this point, we consider the example of water and weeds. So just two examples. So if we say, well, what is water? What is the essence of water? Then the scientists amongst you, or hopefully all of you, will jump up and say, well, water is H2O. And you can break it down, you can look at the atomic structure, and you can really define on a tight scientific basis what is water. But if I say, okay, that's water. If I say, but what are weeds? What are weeds? We all know what weeds are. I'm sure you've all helped in the garden, pulling weeds up, helping out mum or dad, or if you don't have a garden, I'm sure you've all seen people, gardeners, cleaning weeds, pulling weeds up out of the garden at some point, at some time. So, and we'd all recognise what weeds are. But when you then start digging, well, okay, what exactly is a weed? What is the essence of a weed? It's not possible to explain it in the same way, because it doesn't have a weed, doesn't have the same essence. And to see some cultures in some parts of the world might very much, for example, take a dandelion or a buttercup. They're wild flowers. Are they weeds? Well, some people might say yes, and they'd pull them up and say, yeah, we don't want those here. They're weeds. However, other people might say, no, they're flowers. They're not a weed. And some plants grow and are quite welcome and wouldn't call them weeds at all, whereas a different gardener might start pulling them up. So the point is, a weed is a concept that doesn't have an essence. You can't actually break it down and say exactly what a weed is in the same way. Not in the same way that you could say, no, water is H2O. It just, We've learnt what water is. We can define it tightly. There's no subjectiveness to it. There's no personal opinion. Whereas a weed, one person weed can be another person's flower, and it's just a different type of it. Much harder. So it's a looser concept, much harder to define. So we'll pick this up on Friday's lesson, but I'd like you now to do the activity 4 just to finish off, which is for each of the items in the activity, which do you think can have a tightly defined real essence, and which of them is more a concept that's a bit looser. But before you start doing that, if you finish off the reading first, so that you've completed the first 7 pages of reading, maybe go back and think about it again, think about some of the ideas, complete the reading, and then do the last activity. And if you could, then once you've completed it, then feel free to briefly discuss some of the content, but then for the last part of the lesson, can you go to do some individual further research, study, or prepare a presentation on the philosopher that you have picked. And again, we'll be doing that on Friday. Okay, so that's it. If you could crack on with that, and I'll see you on Friday.